Welcome to the new video. It won't stop watching me. No matter what I seem to do, it won't go away. It is watching as I type this. I can see it in my peripheral vision. The cold, red, menacing, and unblinking eyes are constantly hovering above the ground, watching me. I refuse to make eye contact with them. Only when I made eye contact did the harm happen. Even if I can go without harm like this, what kind of life would that be? What kind of life would it be to constantly avoid the malicious eyes that are always watching? It all started on that hike. The last hike I would ever take. I heard the stories about that specific hiking trail, so why didn't I just listen and not go there? I could have been saved from this horror entirely. I walked blissfully on the path, completely oblivious to how my life would shortly become ruined forever. Oh, how I wish to be that oblivious and carefree once more. I continued to walk up the hiking trail, taking in nature's beauty. As I hiked further and further, the abnormalities began to start. They were small at first. It started with a dark red tree that heavily resembled the color of blood. I stopped and admired the tree. It was completely unnatural and unlike anything I had seen before. I should have turned back then, but I continued up the trail. As I continued, the abnormalities only grew worse. I saw a hedge with unearthly and incomprehensible colors and patterns. I can't for the life of me describe those colors and patterns. At that point, I wanted to turn back, but I felt a deep and uncontrollable longing to venture on. I continued on the trail, feeling like a robot. My brain was screaming at me to turn back, but my body only picked up the pace. Before I knew it, the entire trail was completely indescribable and filled with the same incomprehensible patterns and colors. I truly believe I was in another plane of existence. Nothing made sense, but at the same time everything did. I continued to walk, when something that I could recognize finally came into view. The eyes were large, red, and hypnotizing. My body finally stopped and I stared into the eyes until they began to grow closer and closer. They radiated an intense pain that I began to feel. An intense pressure grew inside my head until I almost truly believed it would explode. Instead of exploding, the pressure began to spread through my whole body like a rapidly spreading virus. The pain was the worst I had ever experienced. It felt as if I were a sentient balloon. Just as I thought I would explode, relief washed over me as the pressure subsided almost completely. I looked around and saw that I was at the beginning of the hiking trail once again. I looked down and screamed. The skin from my body was sagging all the way to the ground. My heart began to beat rapidly. I started to run but was heavily slowed down by the skin. I stopped and bent down. I put my hands on my knees and started to breathe rapidly from being so out of breath. I felt defeated. My brain couldn't fully comprehend what I had just experienced, and even now I still don't think it fully has. When I stood back up, the red eyes from earlier locked with my eyes. They were hovering above the ground just enough to be perfectly eye level with me. I felt an intense wave of dread and fear wash over me. I told my body to move, but it didn't. I was paralyzed. My mind became incredibly frustrated at the paralysis. I was screaming at my body to move as I watched the eyes slowly move closer to mine. I started to hear a low vibration radiating from them. The low vibration it was radiating turned into the same pain from earlier as they grew so close that they were the only thing in my view. I suddenly felt my skin tighten and retract. My skin became impossibly tight. I felt as if I were being vacuum sealed. The pain was so unbearable that I wanted nothing more than to die at that moment. For everything to go black forever. No pain, no thoughts, no emotions, nothing. I wanted to feel nothing. I had never craved something as deeply as I had in that moment. Then, out of the blue, I finally felt relief. I got a strong sense of déjà vu from this event. It was practically the same as the event from earlier, but the opposite. I felt my skin and noticed it had become impossibly tight. I felt like I was almost fully suffocated. Each breath I took was a struggle and ached incredibly. I looked behind me where the trail continued on and saw the eyes in my peripheral vision. I didn't dare to look at them once more. I ran down the trail swiftly, every breath I took continuing to deeply pain me. I ran for hours and hours, constantly being slowed down by having to take breathers. I looked behind me occasionally, and it seemed no matter how far I had run, the eye's distance from me never changed. I finally made it to my car and hopped in. I looked in the mirror and was horrified to see what I had become. My skin looked just as tight and painful as it felt. I looked almost inhuman. I looked away and turned my keys in the ignition, causing the engine to roar to life. I started driving at fast speeds. I looked in my rearview mirror and my stomach dropped when I made eye contact with the eyes once again. I knew that I would now have to experience yet another tortuous pain. I stopped the car. I closed my eyes and took a sharp inhale, bracing myself for whatever would come next. I was surprised and relieved to feel nothing after a little while of sitting there. I exhaled and opened my eyes, and the relief I had felt left me when I realized what had happened. My left eye was now perceiving everything in front of me to have the unearthly colors and patterns. I covered my left eye and could now see everything normally. I put the other hand on the wheel and kept driving. I promised myself I would never make eye contact with the eyes again. I finally reached my house and stepped out of my car, continuing to keep my left eye covered. I walked into my house and continued to see the red eyes in my peripheral vision. I grabbed duct tape and taped it over my eye. I ran upstairs and started typing this. Each key I press hurts from the sheer tightness of my skin. I do not know what to do. It was watching me when I started typing this, and now that my typing is coming to an end, it is still hovering there, watching me.